Dark Souls, Dark Souls. Everybody likes Dark Souls. It's the 6-year-old hotness that never stops giving. As the 400th entry in the never-ending line of Souls-inspired RPGs, Immortal Planet isn't too shabby an effort. In Immortal Planet, you take the role of the titular mysterious lone warrior cast out into mysterious worlds for mysterious reasons. Apparently, you're one of many immortals, stirred from your cryosleep in order to fulfill some vague destiny which involves bashing hordes of aliens, nightmares, and now your own mind-warped brethren. It isn't the most original setup to a Souls game, not by a long shot. Hell, just replace the word immortal with undead and the similarities are unmistakable. However, the striking art direction for the characters and environments as well as the slick, satisfying combat make up for the storyline's initially weak grip. The setting's aesthetic is clean and unembellished, yet still very clearly portrays a cold, technological mausoleum quite well. A few of the different stages could use a tad more diversity, but their strong theming does enough to keep you from wondering if you've already been there before. Both goodies and baddies are drawn as faceless, lumbering champions, all comfortably armed with glaives and guns. Their sleek steel masks veiling any intent other than rampant murder, and I contend that masks, in any fiction, will never not be cool. The whole thing looks very comic book, and very good. Beginning the game, you'll be given a few key choices for building your budding immortal. You get to choose between 3 starting weapons, each of which has its own special technique. Each weapon has 2 modes, one generally being quicker, while the other, the ascended form, is slower but stronger. In addition, transitioning a weapon into its ascended form creates an effect. For instance, you'll unleash a skewering charge when ascending a sword spear. Ascending an assault blade, though, will rejuvenate all of your stamina in an instant. And that's not even including the various other instruments of war you'll eventually come across in your travels. You'll also need to choose a character trait. These are a bit more straightforward, one giving you the bloodborne ability to steal life back on hits, while the other one grants access to perfect dodges and blocks, which conserve stamina. These early choices allow for some unique combat styles when first starting a new game, and lets the player decide whether or not to focus on dodging, parrying, or a furious offense. The gameplay isn't much different from what you might already know, marching through dark techno dungeons and squaring off against demented foes one blow at a time. If you die, you guessed it, you're hurled back to your last checkpoint and have to reclaim your lost experience points. It's not even called anything different, it's just experience points. Well, at least they didn't call it souls.
You lose your souls. All of them. Over and over again.
What is different, however, is that you're only given 1 health injector to use, and it's up to you to stock up on more at designated item pads. This gives you the interesting decision on whether or not to barrel through a pack of enemies, hoping that you lose less health than what you would have gained from another injector, or ignore it entirely, relying on your innate ability to never, ever get hit. Wow, aren't you amazing? These injector pads are always on the same spots, but at times they'll also spew out an enemy when you open it, taking you by complete surprise. The random nature of this seems a bit cheap. If I fought hard enough to get to the pad, I should be rewarded with another injector, and not sometimes also a juiced up son of a bitch. Trading blows is a methodical process as you wait for openings or abilities to pop up before going in for the real hurt. Much like you, all enemies, including bosses, have their own stamina bars, which can be seen above their heads. This lets you plan around your opponent's stamina consumption, backing off and baiting strikes when they're full, or going in for the sweep when they're getting worn out. It's straightforward but a little tough to get used to. Your own stamina bar feels marginal compared to other similar bar-based games, and if you exhaust all of your stamina, you end up helpless for a few seconds. Getting hit can also stun you briefly, causing situations that leave you staring blankly at the enormous sword barreling down on your head, arms wide as you embrace the shadow of death. As per the unofficial Souls handbook, Immortal Planet isn't easy. Any stray bullet or knife swipe can deal tremendous damage, with most larger enemies taking up to half of your health in one brutal strike. It's imperative that you avoid taking hits, and fortunately, you're also gifted an array of items and spells to help. Though they have limited uses, they can be immensely helpful, so much so that they make Dark Souls equivalencies look like children's toys. Items such as guns, bombs, and mines are mostly utility, used for picking off weak foes or zoning out sections of the battlefield, but spells are the real game changer here. In Dark Souls, I don't feel like magic is implemented too well. In Dark Souls, I feel like I'm gonna die every time I try to cast a spell. It's slow, leaves you exposed, it's stiff and unreliable at the best of times. I never know if magic is gonna clip some pottery and dissipate, lose its target entirely, or fly into the floor, or whatever. This is the consequence of playing in a 3-dimensional space with targeted tracking. In 2 dimensions, however, spells work much more reliably. In Immortal Planet, spells are big, impactful, and will swiftly take out your bigger threats. Whether it's freezing your enemies and sapping their stamina, or firing off pyroclastic lasers, it feels good to approach any situation with this magical utility in mind. To keep it succinct, Immortal Planet might be the only Souls-like game that made me excited to specialize in wizardry. Again, the game can be tough. The immediacy with which attacks are performed means that there's only a few frames between an enemy's windup and the inevitable hurt. Most attacks are executed instantly, with the exception of bigger, choreographed moves that give you slightly more time to react. Sometimes the instantaneous damage that you take from multiple sources can be exasperating, making one mistake and getting thrown right back into your tomb. Remember to keep in mind that you only start with one healing item. Where Dark Souls can be seen as a game that merely asks for endurance, Immortal Planet is all about practicing perfection. My biggest qualm with the game is that the stamina system feels a bit too harsh. The way the player regains stamina is a bit stilted, as you wait a second or two for the bar to start regenerating, and enemies rarely have to worry about this unless their stamina bar depletes entirely. If you manage to stun an enemy, you'll only be given a couple of hits before your resources are totally drained, which means you're now defenseless against any other potential threats in the room. Even upgrading your stamina fails to solve this problem entirely. Eventually you learn to ration your actions wisely, but at the beginning it's a bit of a mess as your brain recalibrates the system. You'll eventually be given access to challenges from defunct automatons scattered around the place. These are short, 3-wave arenas that test your absolute combat prowess and reveal hidden suicidal tendencies. As sadistic as they are, it's worth your time to beat them for the rewards, each victory increasing your starting health injectors. If you're into the whole Souls thing, Immortal Planet is worth your time. It's simplified, straightforward, and gratifying. If a bit frustrating, and, straightforward. It lacks in originality. It boils down the elements of traditional Souls games and distills them into something more cleanly presented and executed. There are even some elements, like items and magic, from Dark Souls that improve these ideas with much flashier, more useful variants. A couple of years from now, I don't know if I'll remember Immortal Planet, or how much of an impact it'll have on me. I mean, just look at all the Souls-likes on the market right now and ones that are planning to come out in the future. But it's not trying to reinvent the wheel. It's trying to be an entertaining, if unoriginal, action RPG. And that's what it is. What else is there to say?